Well, this is Dateline News and Conversation. Got one of my favorite people back, um, Sylvia Demarest, coming to us live from Dallas. She has been writing these incredible articles on her Substack channel. I'm going to post the link across the bottom of the screen several times during the show. But I want to I want to ask you folks that will be watching this live or watching it when it's recorded. You kind of feel in your gut something is not right. Um, are you beginning to connect some of the dots, especially with the crisis that Trump unprovoked caused with the genocidal entity against Iran? Iran's got a chokehold on basically the entire world by closing off the Straits of Hormuz. Um, there's a lot going on. And my friend Sylvia Demarest wrote an article, and I was wondering if she had coined this phrase or this term, uh, polycrisis. And she wrote that we are stepping into a period where multiple systemic failures are colliding rather than unfolding one at a time, as the usual vocabulary of crisis feels inadequate. Sylvia, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Regis, good to see you.
Sylvia, it's always good to see you. Um, it looks to me like it's a perfect storm. You call it polycrisis. I really love that term, but I'm going to turn it over to you. Um, Tell me why and what motivated you to write this incredible article on your Substack channel. I've read it two or three times, and we're not going to have the ability to put all the supporting graphs and charts that you posted in your article, but I want you to just go at it for this audience and explain what you mean by polycrisis, and then we'll start talking about some examples.
Okay, Regis. Well, I think to understand the term polycrisis, you need to take a look at basically the structure of where we have evolved to in the modern world. And that is, I think we have an economic system that is completely out of whack, that does not work for the vast majority of people. We could call it neoliberalism, you can call it late stage capitalism, you can call it what you want, but we have way too much wealth concentration and way too little in terms of the ability of ordinary people to be able to earn enough money to pay the cost of living. When you combine that with the the response that the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Congress has had to both the financial crisis and to the COVID crisis, you see this flood of liquidity that's resulted in an acceleration of the cost of living, which is making it very, very difficult for people to be able to afford housing, to be able to afford food, et cetera. And then you combine that with what's going on internationally in terms of the aggression that the Western world has addressed towards Russia by provoking the war in Ukraine, and now the unprovoked attack on Iran. And you see this expanding crisis where obviously the Western world is trying to figure out a way to stay on top rather than to work through uh, diplomatic relations with countries like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Cuba. Instead, we have exceptional aggression being directed against these countries, with the result that there is now a real risk of a world war. In fact, it was pointed out the other day that the war in Ukraine and the war in Iran is now separated by only 600 and something miles. So it wouldn't take much to have war all across that part of the world, which of course, if you include China, is where the real dynamic is currently located in terms of growth and advancement. And then if you look structurally, what you see is this incredible level of debt, not only in terms of government debt, but personal debt all across the world, especially the Western world. The United States now has a national debt of close to $40 trillion. About $10 trillion of that has to be refinanced this year. In the face of that, you see rising interest rates. And because of the cost of energy, you have more and more countries that are now selling their treasuries in order to, and their gold even, in order to be able to buy energy. And so in the past, whenever we've had a crisis, the Federal Reserve has opened the floodgates and the Congress has opened the floodgates of funding, and you've had trillions of dollars pour into the economy in order to bolster the economy. Well, with these kinds of debt levels, in order to do that, you risk basically hyperinflation. And then you have the crisis that's resulted from the war in Iran, where the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed, not because Iran has necessarily closed it, but because there's kinetic action going on in the strait that makes it dangerous for any transport company to risk those huge assets to go through the strait. You have insurance companies refusing to provide insurance. You have the United States Navy there firing shots. You have Iran responding. And as a result, you've got about 1,000 boats trapped in the Strait of Hormuz, unable to move, collecting barnacles on their hulls and wondering where they're going to get the bunker fuel once the strait is open to be able to transit. And so people are wondering, why hasn't this crisis appeared in the fore? And the reason is when the Iran war started, the world was in surplus. There were a lot of fully loaded boats sitting around, both Iran and Russia, trying to find markets, being restricted by the United States, and you know, everybody was full, and so that has slowly been eliminated. And most of the experts in the field, including the big oil companies, now say that we're going to reach what's called tank bottom sometime toward the end of June, middle of July. And what that means is that there's not going to be any more drawdown that's going to be possible. The United States has been drawing from its strategic petroleum reserves. China has been drawing. China has been selling oil to East Asia, trying to control the crisis. Japan has drawn down reserves. Everybody has drawn down reserves. And as a result, what we haven't seen is we haven't seen demand destruction, where people's habits change that results in the curtailment of oil usage. So as a result, there's that. We have a combined crisis of an out of whack economy, high debt levels, ongoing war, the failure of the administration to be able to respond to that. And then we have the general feeling among the population that the current leadership is simply doesn't care about them and is incapable of dealing with the crisis. And that appears to me to be very, very true. I don't think the corporate leadership is very competent. We have an ongoing bubble with these data centers. People don't understand what that's about. There's a fledgling a desire, I think, for full spectrum surveillance of all of our lives, so that everything is controlled, everything is managed, and everything is run by the most bizarre and despicable set of billionaires that is possible to achieve. The leadership, the elite within the Western world is despicable. They care not for anybody other than making their fortunes grow. They care not about human life. And as a result, it seems to me that the people have lost confidence in the leadership. And so when the polycrisis does hit, if it does hit, and all of these simultaneous crises come together, creating one large crisis. Where will the unity be within the public to come together to accept the problems that are going to have to be dealt with, and to be able to get the economy and the public mood going again? Because right now it seems to me that the public mood is very negative. I think everything is being held together by the fact that the SpaceX IPO is going to launch on June 12th. And I think everybody wants that to be successful. Elon Musk has a lot of authority and capacity, particularly within the administration. And so I think we'll hold everything together until then. And then we have this spreading in your face corruption, which is just not only not beneath the surface anymore, but right there in your face, unable to be denied. And I think the public is beginning to see it. And what the result will be, I know not. But all of those things feed into the public mood and into confidence. And once confidence wanes, then the polycrisis will become manifest.
Um, I want to elaborate a little bit more on this
I don't hear you.
polycrisis. Hello, 1, 2. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? My microphone is working.
I don't hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah, my microphone says it's working here. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can't hear
I can't
me.
hear you.
Damn. This happened once before. Hello, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to continue. I don't know what else to do because
I can't hear you. I don't know if the public can hear you, Regis, but I can't.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
My mic is on.
Yeah, my mic is on too. One, two, three. Hello.
You know, I can continue to talk if that would help while you try to figure this out. Because I wrote another essay for the Substack. This one focusing on what's going on in the Eastern Mediterranean.
1, 2, 3.
And that involves the son-in-law of Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, and activities in Albania that have now come to the fore in terms of public crises and public protests about a deal that the government gave to Jared to be able to develop an island and other things in a wetland off the coast of Albania. This is all very interesting. I can go through Mr. Kushner's history. His father, what do you think, Regis?
Can you hear me now?
It's not.
Disconnect.
Okay.
Disconnect. Can you hear me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
God damn. Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened.
Can you cut that section out after I stopped?
No, we're live.
We're live. Hi,
We're live.
everybody. Okay.
Let me. I want to ask a couple of questions. I love the term polycrisis, and really, what we're talking about is a whole string of overlapping conflicts. And you mentioned many of them. One of them that you really didn't highlight is the agricultural sector. And that is being really impacted because of the Straits of Hormuz. It's basically a chokehold, not only on gas and oil, but fertilizers. And it's the growing season in many parts of the world. And what this is going to lead to are, I think, some violent clashes in other parts of the world. And it's definitely going to lead to famine. I don't think that the United States and the West is going to be able to ride this out. My question to you is, do you think, I mean, given the political chaos that you were talking about, given the lack of any confidence people have in the government, social contracts, do you think that the United States and Europe are going to begin to feel this lack of food and hunger?
I think what they're going to, well, in the United States, I think what we're going to feel is going to be an exceptional level of food inflation. Now, both Russia and China have been trying to mitigate this crisis in the rest of the world. That's what one of the reasons that China has exported. That's another reason why Russia has said we'll try to make up some of this, because Russia makes fertilizer, and I think Russia has been trying to ship, but it depends on when it gets there and when the planting season is and when the fertilizer is necessary. Frankly, Regis, I don't think the West gives a damn about
You're
the
right.
developing world. And I think as far as the West is concerned, if a bunch of those people die, it'll just be fine with them. I think that goes back to what I said before. That's the despicable level of the leadership and the investment class of billionaires, the financiers, the hedge fund operators, the private equity operators that have taken over and are running this economy into the ground by basically concentrating wealth and then using that funny money that they create by pumping up the stock market to go out there and buy up everything in the world, including increasingly farmland here in the United States and around the world. Now, what they want to do with that land, I don't know. But Bill Gates, uh, 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 what's his face from Amazon, Bezos, and the guy from Meta are the increasingly the largest buyers of farmland in the United States. What these yahoos intend to do with that, I have no idea. All of them are against cattle. They're against protein. They want to have fake meat. They want you to eat bugs. So yes, the food crisis is real. I should have mentioned it because not only is there a lack of fertilizer, but it's being combined with this super El Nino, which could spread drought and create other problems in terms of food growing and harvest, especially the high cost of diesel. So that's all part of this polycrisis that we're talking about. And it hasn't manifested itself as of yet. And so as a result, I think a lot of people don't necessarily believe that it's possible because everybody has talked about crises in the past and it either doesn't manifest or it's not as bad as everybody claims it's going to be. So maybe that's the case this time. I don't know. But the leadership crisis is real, and the public's disgust with the leadership is real.
You know, I was just looking for something here and I can't find it. Um, I read something earlier today that many people are coming up with reactions to eating beef, millions of people actually, and they claim that it comes from uh, supposedly a tick, and I think probably even coming from Texas, and that uh, the analysis was what's behind this is exactly what you're alluding to, what you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's part of Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Bezos, um, trying to, uh, on the one hand, reduce the population, and second of all, get people to stop eating not only beef, but poultry, pork, and whatever. And, uh, Sylvia, I don't think enough people have a clue what's coming. I don't
Well,
think
this
they
it's Algal disease, and about 400,000 or 500,000
that
people have it
that was
now.
it.
And
Algal disease.
and it hasn't struck so much here in Texas. What people are reporting crazy things. People are reporting finding boxes of ticks that have been dropped from airplanes in areas. People are reporting finding elk so covered with ticks that the ticks have consumed all the blood and have killed the elk. Um, and what happens when you get one of these tick bites is you have an anaphylactic reaction to eating beef, and it's actually life threatening. And so you can no longer consume beef. This goes back to a crazy idea that people have about the risk from animals in our environment. And if you'll give me a few minutes here, I think people need to understand the carbon cycle. Uh, because the grasslands, if they're properly maintained, are an enormous carbon sink. And what happens is ruminants come in and eat the grass and produce one of the most nutritious products possible. You can live on beef without having to eat anything else. It's almost a complete nutrient. And so the animal eats the grass, which humans can't consume, and it gives off carbon in that consumption. The grass consumes the carbon and the excrement from the animals, and so there's a carbon cycle. The grass grows, the ruminant eats it, the ruminant gives off carbon, the grass absorbs the carbon, gives off oxygen, the ruminant eats the oxygen, and provides the nutrition back into the soil. And so grasslands are one of the most important features of our planet, and they cannot continue to persist and to flourish without ruminants. So if you kill off all the cows and the buffalo and the deer and the elk and all of that, the grasslands will disappear. And in its place, you'll have scrubland and stuff that's not really useful for anything. So these people need to have a brain implant or something, or to figure out about what science really is. I mean, there have been experiments. The Savoy Institute has done enormous work throughout Africa where they have demonstrated that you bring back deserts, that you can even change the weather by how you manage grasslands. And in order to manage grasslands, you need ruminants.
And part of what these guys are doing, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and others who are trying to get us off of eating beef, they're saying that we got to get rid of cows because they're giving off too much methane, and that's it's affecting the climate. And it's like, oh my God. There's no limit to which they'll go to uh, to corrupt science and to just plaster us with all this fake science. That anyway, it's devious. It's not just disturbing. Um, it's evil.
It's
It,
dangerous because what they're doing is they're ruining human health and they're ruining environmental health. This whole thing that they got onto about carbon and all of this crap that they did was so disturbing and so mind-boggling that they ignored the one thing that we need to do, which is to have respect for the earth and to work in cooperation with earth systems so that everybody can flourish. They don't want to do that. These people are idiots. They want to control. They now control politics with their money. They control government with their money. They control the internet and the markets with their money, and they think they are gods and that have the wisdom to be able to run the world. And yet they're some of the most idiotic people that have ever walked the earth. It's really sad that we have a situation now where the leadership is so degraded.
Well, it's all over the world. It's not just the United States. It's
Oh,
all over Europe. You know, you mentioned offline. Uh, the United States and the EU are meddling in other countries, trying to pull them out of Russia's sphere of influence. Georgia, Bulgaria, and now Armenia, with an election coming up on Sunday. Um, and they're just throwing money at these corrupt politicians who are treasonous. They're traitors to their people, to their history, to their culture, to their
it,
religions.
it's all coming from the same money system. This bull market, funny money, bull market, funny money. If you look at my essay, you will see, this is one of the biggest bull markets in history. I have a graph that showed all of the previous bull markets, and this rivals everything except going all the way back to the railroad crisis. And so you produce this funny money from these stock increases and from this flood of liquidity that the Fed and the Congress releases into the system that kills the budget of ordinary people, but puts more money into the pockets of these billionaires, which they then use to go corrupt the entire friggin' world. I mean, and yes, all of those leaders in Europe are all completely reliant and holding to the same financial interest that controls the United States, that controls Europe, and 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 is pushing uh, all of these wars in order to maintain their control globally. And it emanates from the billionaire class, which is highly skewed towards Zionist interests. And you see that playing out all over the world. These are not people that have humanity's best interest or the globe's best interest at heart. They want power, they want complete control, and they will do anything to achieve that.
Yeah, and let's clarify something. Uh, Many people are blaming Donald Trump and the United States, but Donald Trump and the United States are being used. Trump is being very effectively used, and these transnational financial elite, if you want to call them elite, uh, they're the ones. It's not really Trump. It's the United States has been their battering ram, and I think it's important that people begin to know who some of these people are. And
Well,
I think that
it's the billionaire class, and really you've got about 2,000 people that run the world. They might their influence might differ depending on sector, but George Carlin said it very clearly. It's a big club and you're not in it.
yeah,
And so every politician in the United States is completely dependent upon these financiers. I was thinking about writing an essay. Is the United States part of Greater Israel? Because I don't know if you've heard, but there are these provisions both in the renewal on the Surveillance Act and in the new military act, funding act, that will basically combine the United States military with
yeah,
Israel military. And Rouhana tried to strip that out of the House bill in committee and was voted down. So you have people that have been elected to represent the people in the United States who are basically representing about 100 people. And those people have very specific goals in mind. And that has nothing to do with human dignity, human thriving, and our human integrity. It has to do with power and control. And Zionism, unfortunately, rules the day. And increasingly, people are beginning to understand that and beginning to rebel against that. But then what happens is these people have enormous power, and they openly say, if you have a business, we'll bankrupt you. If you have a job, we'll get you fired. If you have a bank account, we'll make sure it goes to zero. And they have the power to do that. And the only way to combat that is for everybody to understand that together it's going to take everybody. If we're going to have the kinds of financial reforms that will put this economy back on track to where it works for most people. People are going to have to put aside their ideology, their party politics, and recognize it's one big system. And they're using all of these social issues to divide us. And we're going to have to understand that and focus on the people that are behind all of this. And that's not going to be easy to do.
Yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm not sure that another election or another revolution is going to do it. But I want to ask you this, because a lot of people in my circle, and I'm by no stretch of the imagination an economist, but I have been reading that economists in Europe, uh, the CEOs of some of the biggest banks, Jamie Dimon, have been predicting an economic collapse worse than the Great Depression. And according to my thinking and my way of processing all of this, when I look at everything you've been talking about, the polycrisis, the perfect storm, what I think the end result is an economic collapse of that system that you're talking about.
Well, it almost happened. It almost happened during the Great Recession, and look what it took to salvage that. And the direct result of that was the creation of these private equity firms, these hedge funds, which complicated the economic crisis even more by increasing the amount of speculation, increasing the amount of wealth concentration. And so what you have now is you have so much debt, personal, governmental, and it's spread all around the world. I mean, it's an enormous pile of debt, and obviously it cannot be paid. And so something is going to happen. People are predicting, maybe we'll have hyperinflation followed by deflation. Maybe these countries that owe so much money in dollars will all decide that they're going to default at once, which will create a sufficiently large crisis to where it brings down the dollar system. I have no idea. I want to say one more thing, because this was something that came up about 2 years ago. There was this guy by the name of Deason. I think it's Deason, and he had a thing on the internet. And he made this prediction that the United States would suffer a 70% decline in population, I think by the year 2028. And they made him take it down. They made him take his website down. But I think you can still find a reference to it on the internet. And Deason had a pretty good track record of prediction prior to that time. Now, I don't know what this was based on. And he had a population projection for a number of countries. And I remember looking at Russia, because I saw it at the time. I remember looking at Russia. Russia did not have a population decline, neither did China. But the United States had this enormous population decline. And the only thing I can think of is that he must be thinking that we're going to have some kind of revolution in the United States, but yeah, no, that which cannot go on will stop. That was Yogi Berra. If it can't go on forever, it'll stop. Now, it can go in many different ways, and it can go on longer than we anticipate. I mean, look how long it took the Roman Empire to collapse. It took centuries. And the United States is still very powerful, still very, very powerful, and we're not done. When we get an opportunity, we're going to go screw around with Cuba. And I still think we're going to try to take Greenland. And if I were Canada, I would not be too happy about what's going to go on in Alberta, because there's a lot of oil resources there too. The United States, the financiers, the people who run the country and the world have apparently decided that we need to control energy globally. And once we control it, globally, then we can control China.
I think that's exactly right. They're going for broke.
Yeah.
Uh, this is the bottom of the ninth inning as far as they're concerned. Now, you mentioned Russia and China. Uh, you're certainly aware of this, and we've talked about this in the past, and I have commented on this uh, endlessly. Russia and China have been showing extreme patience in not responding militarily to all of the provocations that the United States has been uh, inflicting on the rest of the world. Uh, you mentioned Canada, Greenland, Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, Russia, China. Um, Russia and China, and I'd like your opinion on this, uh, have avoided a direct conflict with the hegemon, with these big, powerful transnational uh, financiers, betting that the system is in collapse right now, that it's not sustainable. For everything you listed in terms of the great disparity of wealth, inflation, uh, the lack of food resources, you name it. Uh, do you think that's been the strategy of Russia and China, not to get involved in well, a final war because it'll go nuclear, and
That's
have
what
been really patient because they really think they're watching the hegemon collapse. They're watching this economic system collapse.
I think they're trying to avoid a nuclear war. And
Yeah,
I know Vladimir Putin is under a great deal of criticism now because the war in Ukraine has gone on for so long. And now the West is provoking Ukraine into doing all this terrorism. It's not being called terrorism, but that's what it is. These are not military um, targets that Ukraine is targeting. Ukraine is trying to target the Russian population in order to overthrow the government or whatever they're trying to do. Um, but if 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 Putin and if China had not been as patient, if they had not been as strategic as they have been, we would have already been in a nuclear war.
yeah,
And they have avoided that as a result of a policy that has involved what people need to realize is, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little bit of time here about Russia. You know, when Putin took over Russia, Russia was flat on its back. Its military was in tatters. The economy was in tatters. The country had been taken over by these Jewish oligarchs. There were plans for all of these Russian assets to be sold to the West for pennies on the dollar. The whole thing was set up. It happened during the 1990s. We've talked about this, et cetera. And so Putin said about to put Russia back together again. One of the first things he did was he went to the oligarchs and he said, look, pay your taxes, stay out of politics. And even though everything you got was gotten illegally, if you play ball and work for the benefit of Russia, I will allow you to maintain these assets. Well, the first person to fall out of line was Khodorkovsky. He tried to sell Yugos to a Western major oil company, and he didn't pay his taxes, and so he ended up in jail. He ended up having to leave the country. Slowly but surely, Russia started putting its economy, its military, its social structure back together again. But when 2014 happened and the Ukrainian government was overthrown, uh, Russia was not ready at that time to take on the West, and so as a result, they went through the Minsk Accords trying to deal with the crisis that Ukraine basically wanted to get rid of Russian speakers by killing them if necessary, and they were concentrated in the eastern part of Ukraine. And so they attacked Ukraine, started the civil war, and Russia tried to manage that while its military kept getting back together again. And of course, the Minsk Accords didn't work, and Ukraine, with NATO help, built up all this system of fortifications across the eastern part of the Donbass, etc. Very, very, very powerful, very, very difficult to deal with. And then decided they were going to attack eastern Ukraine and basically kill or expel all of these people, forcing Russia to intervene. Russia was provoked into intervening in Ukraine, but the military still wasn't together yet. It has taken 4 years for Russia to put its military together, for it to get the system to produce the weaponry, to get the weapons tested and brought into service. And increasingly, Russia is, as best I can tell, the most powerful military globally, with the ability from a productive standpoint to maintain that capacity even in the face of global war. The United States can't do it. We cannot make any more weapons. We are at tank bottom on that too. And China doesn't want to sell us the inputs for this weaponry, et cetera. So that has been their strategy, to weaken the West, to destroy the cohesiveness of the West. We see that in NATO. NATO is being held together by baling wire. The West is falling apart in terms of the people backing the strategy of the government. This war against Ukraine is the most unpopular war in the history of the United States. I had that chart in my Substack as well. This is the first war where that's been the case. So people criticize the strategy of Xi and of Putin, but there was no other strategy if you were going to avoid nuclear war. Now the question has become, the West is getting desperate. And I've talked about this before. We have all of this debt. We have a shortage of collateral. Russia is wealthy. Russia has enormous resources, unencumbered resources, unencumbered by debt. If Western financiers could get their hands on Russia, if they could solidify Africa, if they could take over South America and put all of those resources in their hands, they can expand this debt bubble even further and continue Western hegemony for another 50 or 100 years. That is what is at stake. I think Russia and China understand it a lot better than I do, and I think that has been their strategy. Is it going to work? That depends on the polycrisis and when the polycrisis hits. I have a feeling the polycrisis is going to become manifest before this year is over. And if that is the case, then I think we'll see a change in governments throughout the West. I think Donald Trump may not finish his term. I think some of these stupid leaders in Europe that represent everything but the European people may get changed. I think there may be a greater people's movement for that. As long as the stock market is at new highs, all of the resources of the United States has been put into the stock market bubble. If the stock market bubble fails, then the economic plan of the United States fails, because they use that money to control the world.
Let me ask you something. Again, a layman, when it comes to Wall Street and the economy, I've been reading that there are cracks that are appearing in that Wall Street bubble.
No question about it.
People have been noticing that it depends on what Trump says about the progress of peace talks in Iran. And would you agree with that what Trump is doing is keeping the confidence in Wall Street? And it's not the people that are benefiting from that, is it?
Now, let me tell you how Wall Street works. About 70% of trading is done by these bots. All of this stuff about you're on the floor and you're doing no, it's all electronic now. People have a computer set up right next to the feed so that the bots can get it nanoseconds before everybody else, so they can position themselves. So what the Trump administration has been working with Axios, and this one reporter in particular from Axios, and Bloomberg. Bloomberg is the biggest provider of live data everybody has a Bloomberg terminal in their office. Bloomberg is global. Michael Bloomberg, another Zionist, controls Bloomberg, and they are working with the Trump administration to basically manipulate the markets so that, number one, stocks continue to go up. And number two, it provides these trading opportunities for people who are in the know to front run all of these changes. And every day, if you notice, Trump will say, I think the talks are going well. The Ayatollah is involved in it. He seems like a good guy. I want to meet with him. I think we're going to do a deal in the next few days. And oil prices go down and stocks go up. And that has been the way things have gone. It's been manipulated, but they have been successful at the manipulation. And the manipulation was made possible by what I mentioned before. And that is, we were in surplus when this war started. And that surplus is slowly being consumed. And when that surplus is consumed, then you will no longer be able to hide the fact that prices are going to go up. And that includes the price of energy, the price of diesel, the price of gas, the price of everything. Because it's not just energy that's not coming out. It's sulfur and aluminum and helium and all of these other inputs that are important for everything. But I have to give them credit. They've managed this very, very well.
Are you back?
I'm here. Did I go away?
Oh, we both did on my end anyway. I don't know what happened. I've been having horrible internet problems all day long. If it's not one thing, it's another. Having to have my identity proven, uh, and now tonight in the show there's been two or three interruptions. I don't know what's going on. Let's finish on this note. Uh, I think you did a good job of explaining how the stock market is being manipulated and the role that Trump is playing in this. But in terms of the polycrisis, in terms of the perfect storm, I think I agree with you. I don't think there's any stopping it. There are no institutions in the United States or the West that have the ability to solve it. And so I think, as you mentioned, maybe by the end of June or certainly July, something big.
They'll be cracked. Now, I use the metaphor of spring warming the ice on a frozen river, and that, everything looks stable until cracks form, and that sometimes can be violent in its execution. And I think that certainly is a possibility here, but I don't think people should get ahead of themselves. The system continues to have enormous resiliency, and I think it will continue to have resiliency, and it will take time for this to happen. In my essay, I talked about Iran saying it's going to unfold in stages, and I think that's true. But I think we're looking at something that will go on for possibly several years, and I'm not sure if the situation will ever return to normal, because all of these oil things that are being used up are going to have to be replaced. The strategic petroleum reserve will have to be refilled. So even when they catch up, there's still going to be, excess demand out there. And of course, we still don't know what's going to happen. We still don't know when the United States and Iran will settle this well enough to where people will have confidence to be able to send ships through Hormuz, and how soon that traffic will resume. People are saying, even under the best of circumstances, 6 months, it could still be 40% of what it was. So we definitely are at the point, and I want to make one more point if I have time. We have a new chairman of the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh, and he has written extensively critical of the Fed for coming in and doing what the Fed did after the great financial crisis, to save these institutions and to pump up the economy. Can he, if he curtails that liquidity, and if Congress is unable to step in and provide more liquidity, then what has enabled us to survive in the past will no longer be there, and that's a flood of liquidity that keeps it all afloat.
I don't feel very happy. I don't feel very hopeful. I don't feel very optimistic. Um, I think a lot of us around the world are going to feel it. And I think, uh, I don't know that Russia or China will be exempt. I think both of them are so dependent on this global economy, global supply chains, that I think it's going to have an effect on them as well. Sylvia, thanks again for hanging in there. Given the couple of disruptions we had with the internet, seems to be getting more problematic for me as time goes on. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Regis.